r/no sleep. Posted by u/RoyalTemyin. My friend drank from a mysterious river, and now he's trying to kill me. We first discovered it while camping. Me and my friend Dave were both experienced campers, and like to go every weekend. Instead of booking a spot on a campground, we prefer to go out into a random spot in the woods and see what we can find. We usually drive out on a small highway somewhere, pull over, get out, and start walking. Irresponsible, I know, but this was the only real escape we got from our boring office jobs. One weekend, it seemed like everything would go as normal. We threw our gear into Dave's SUV and hit the road. This time, we went farther than we ever had before. After about 1,000,000 turns and 3 hours of driving, we eventually ended up on a small, 2-lane dirt road surrounded by a wooded area. "Let's stop here," I suggested. "Seems as good a place as any." Dave agreed, so we got our huge backpacks out of the car and began walking. After walking for a couple hours, we found it. A large, 20 meters across river tumbling through the landscape. A small sign next to it said, in faint writing, "Demonium River." "Looks like a good place to camp," Dave commented. I started to look for firewood while Dave set up the tent. When I came back, I saw Dave holding a bottle of water. He was about to take a sip. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "I took it from the river. I used a water tablet, so it's safe," he responded. "We brought water bottles, remember?" I reminded him. "Oh, I forgot about that. Well, this shouldn't go to waste." He took a sip. "This tastes kind of strange." He dumped it out next to his chair. Everything seemed fine the rest of the night. We cooked dinner over the fire and had a couple of drinks. At around 10 p.m., we decided to go to bed. After all, we had to wake up early for tomorrow. I woke up in the middle of the night. I checked my watch, but it didn't seem to be working. It wasn't stuck on a specific time. Instead, the hands spun around wildly, way too fast to be normal. I figured it must have been broken. That's when I heard it. Coming from the river. Splashing noises, accompanied by terrible gulping noises. We had brought bear spray in case of bears, and I grabbed it. I looked next to me. Dave wasn't in the tent. Cautiously, I looked outside. The first thing I saw was the moon. Before I went to sleep, it was a crescent moon. Now, it was a full moon, giving off a deep crimson light. The river was the same crimson color, like it was filled with paint. Or blood? Near the sign was Dave, taking great gulps of the putrid water. "Dave? Hello?" I called out nervously. He spun around. He was smiling. It was such a wide smile, I could see every last one of his teeth. His eyes were so open and bloodshot I thought they might pop right out of their sockets. He stood up and shambled towards me. I was frozen in fear. I noticed that he had grown a good 3 feet taller than he was last night. "Taste it," he rasped, shoving a chiseled goblet filled with the red water. "It will cleanse you." I didn't know what else to do. I just ran. I ran through the woods. I needed to make it back to the car. I looked behind me to see him lurching after me. His eyes were completely red now, and his teeth were stained the color. He was howling as if he was in pain. "Come back," he screeched. "You must taste it." I didn't answer. I just ran farther and farther. Eventually, I couldn't hear his footsteps behind me anymore. I looked behind me. He was gone. I didn't stop running. I ran and I ran until I arrived at a clearing. I stopped and I saw it. Our campsite. How did I end up here? I ran in a straight line. What was going on? And where was Dave? My final question was answered as I felt 2 hands grip my shoulders. Then Dave spoke. "You do not just need to drink it. No. You must let it consume you." He led me to the river. Suddenly, thousands of hands appeared out of the river, clawing all around. The hands looked terrifying. They were completely skeletal. 1,000,000 voices came out of the river. "Sacrifice!" they all proclaimed. Dave was about to push me in when I remembered something. The bear spray, it was still in my pocket. I pulled it out, aimed it behind me, and sprayed. Dave screamed in terror. He let go of me, and started clawing his eyes out. Blood started gushing out of them. In a panic, I pushed Dave into the river. He screamed even louder as the thousands of skeletal hands gripped him and dragged him down into the depths. After this, the hands receded, the water changed back to a blue color, and the moon returned to normal. I ran to the direction of the car. I didn't stop, not even for a second. After several hours, I made it there. I got in and drove out of there. The disappearance of Dave is still being investigated. I told the police that he just got lost in the woods collecting firewood, and thankfully they believed that. I told them the location of our camping site. However, they were very confused. They found all of our gear and our tent, but there wasn't a river. Posted by u/RoyalTemyin. I found an old TV in a dumpster. The channels it's showing aren't normal. I found it while walking home. I was taking a shortcut through an alleyway when I saw it, nestled among the trash bags. The television looked like it was some 80 years old, a large wooden cabinet with a small, 15-inch screen in the upper center. It had a few knobs on the side for changing the channel and volume. I've always liked antiques, and this looked really cool, valuable, even. I picked it up, it was surprisingly light, and took it home. I knew it probably wouldn't even work, and even if it did, I wouldn't be able to get a signal. I don't know much about TVs, but I did know that the older ones used analog signals that hadn't been online since 2009. I looked at the plug at the back of the TV, and I felt a little disappointed. The plug looked completely different from all the modern ones. That's when I noticed something. There was a small compartment on the back of the TV, and inside it was an adapter. I felt pretty relieved, because now I could test it after all. I doubted it even worked. After all, who would throw out a functional antique television? I plugged in the adapter and then the TV. I pressed the power button. To my surprise, it sprang to life. A loud fizz of static permeated the room. This made sense, after all. There weren't any analog channels. Even so, it was still cool to have my thoughts were interrupted as the static started to fade. The first thing I noticed was how dark the room became. Natural light previously filled the room, but now it was as dark as midnight. The only light in the room came from the glowing white screen. Clearly something was wrong, but I was completely enraptured by the screen. The static slowly faded. A young man in his 20s stood staring directly at me. He was smiling a sort of fake smile that creeped me out. "When I'm feeling thirsty," he announced proudly. "I always have a nice drink of sugar liquid." The man disappeared and was replaced with a bottle of a deep crimson liquid. "Purchase one of our fine products today at a store near you, now for only 49 cents. A voice said. It was one of those generic 1940s narrator voices. To test it out, try one of our free samples now. I was in a trance. I reached into the TV. To my surprise, my hand went right through the screen. The inside felt wet and fizzy, like I was dipping my hands in soda. I touched the bottle. Its coldness snapped me out of it. I yanked my hand out and jabbed the power button. Instantly, the sun came back out and the darkness receded. However, around the TV, there was a circle around it that was bleached white. I was completely shocked. All I knew was that I didn't want this thing in my apartment. I didn't want it to exist at all. My apartment is on the 12th floor of my building, so I doubted it would survive the fall. I opened the window and chucked it out. Phew. That was a relief. I had no clue what the heck just happened. All I knew was that I was dead tired and there was work in the morning. Somehow, hours had passed since I first turned on the TV. I went to bed, trying not to think about what just happened. I awoke at 6:53 to noises. I was surprised, because my alarm wasn't set until 7 o'clock. To my horror, the noise was a voice. I ran to the living room, and there it was. The white, bleached circle had expanded enough to creep up the wall. The windows were completely dark again. The TV seemed to be showing the weather, but I didn't care. I yanked the plug out. The TV went dark, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. I forgot all about work. All I knew was that this thing wouldn't leave me alone. I highly doubted that it had somehow survived the fall without a dent. This TV was cursed. I put it in the back seat of my car. I was going to take it someplace where it could never harm me again. It turned on again in the back seat. I turned around. The screen was a blinding white color, and the crimson liquid in that bottle from earlier was spilling out of the screen. "You look thirsty." The voice came, through a roar of static and sparks. "Cool off with RRR refreshing sugar liquid." The image of several overturned bottles appeared on the screen. Their contents were spilling outside of the screen. I turned around to jab the power button. It turned on again almost immediately. In other news, it is recommended to watch at least 24 hours of television a day. At this point, I pressed the off button and smashed the screen. It shattered into a million pieces. My hand was cut and bleeding, but I didn't care. That would shut it up, at least for a little while. I knew where I was taking it. I arrived back at the dumpster where I found it. I plopped it in without a second thought. By now, the screen had repaired itself. It turned back on. A list of numbers appeared on the screen. We hope you enjoyed your experience with our product. Please rate your experience, from 19 to 42. I turned it off again, but it immediately turned itself back on and repeated the message. Hesitantly, I reached in. I grabbed the number 19, and pulled out of there. "Thank you for your rating. Have a nice day." At this, the TV just disappeared. I looked at the piece of paper in my hand. To my surprise, it started to move. It wiggled over to the dumpster. To my shock, it twisted and changed until it became a television. It turned on. "Your feedback has been monitored. Thank you for helping us improve our methods." At this, it shut itself off. I ran away and never looked back. I don't know what just happened. If my feedback somehow improved its methods of luring people into it, I really hope nobody finds it. Who knows what happens if you do go fully inside it. The sugar liquid still stained my car seat. I spent a long time scrubbing it off. Thankfully, my living room reverted to normal after the whole ordeal. I don't know if other people in my city have been through this. Maybe I was the first to find it, or if it's been slowly improving its tactics over several years. Either way, it is dangerous. If you find something like it in a dumpster, especially if it's in mint condition, run. Don't look back. I'm lucky to have survived. I don't think the next person to find it will. Posted by you/RoyalTemyin. I haven't been able to drink milk ever since I quit my job at a dairy farm. I was pretty desperate for a job. I had made the mistake of getting a philosophy degree instead of something actually useful, and that didn't exactly guarantee a good position. I was living back with my parents, who I could tell wanted me to get my own place. We lived in a small town in the Rust Belt of the US, where only factory jobs were available. College me probably would have fainted at the thought of working in an industrial setting, but I had loans to pay off. I was looking online for positions when I saw the ad. It had a picture of a smiling cartoon cow, and the words Old Wilson Dairy printed above it. Below, it said that they were hiring. I decided to click on it. I goggled in shock when I saw the job description. It offered $75 an hour for an entry-level job. Even better, the position was for a supervisor, so I wouldn't have to risk my life using heavy machinery. I applied for the position and got an automatic response, telling me to come in for an interview. I arrived at the factory. It was a huge, gray, concrete, windowless structure a few miles out of town. The twin smokestacks on the roof were belching smog into the otherwise clear sky. There was a massive sign above the door with that same smiling cow logo. A man was waiting for me at the door. He was a bullying, slightly chubby guy in his mid-40s. He looked normal enough, but something about him gave me the creeps. "Are you here about the job?" he asked me. "Yes, sir," I responded, a little nervously. "Come with me." He took me past the empty reception area to his office, a small drab room with a simple desk and chair. The interview was pretty basic. Even though I didn't have any real work experience or skills that would contribute to this job, he didn't seem to mind. He explained what I would be doing in this job, and it didn't sound like much. Just oversee the machines. Whoever would pay $75 an hour for that is clearly stupid. I wasn't going to tell him that, though. He gave me a small tour of the factory, so I could see if I wanted to work there or not. The factory was really big. There were sections for making ice cream, bottling milk, and turning the milk into cheese. All of these were then packaged and sent away by massive trucks. We passed a red door. "That's where the cows live," he told me. "You aren't to go in there, it's not a part of your job." "Ever?" I asked. "You can never go in there," he responded. "Unless you have my say-so." I was creeped out a little, but I knew the way some of these factory farms treated their animals. I guess he didn't want me to see that. Finally, when the tour ended, he told me I got the job. He said I could start on Monday. I was ecstatic, as now I could finally move out and get my own place. I was still a little confused as to why someone would pay such a high salary for such little work, but I wasn't one to question it. He said the job had only 2 easy rules. I already mentioned the first one: don't go into the cow pens unless I ask you to. I nodded. This was going to be easy. "The second rule," he began, "is that you can't tell anyone you work here. You know, for tax reasons." That one was a lot weirder. I didn't know that having no employees got you a tax break, but I really didn't want to lose this job. On Monday, I walked onto the factory floor. Everything seemed to be running fine. Even if something broke, I wouldn't have a clue about how to fix it. Eventually I found a small employee area where 3 other people were sitting, chatting or looking at their phones. They all looked up at me when I arrived. "You the one that replaced Will?" one of them asked. "Replaced?" I asked, a little confused. "Nobody works here forever, Only for 4 months. Then they hire someone new. Why? I asked. I don't know. I don't really care, though. As long as I get paid. Work, if you can call it that, went smoothly. Employees got a discount on all Old Wilson dairy products, and I was addicted to them. They tasted just like any other milk or cheese, but I got an inexplicably great feeling while eating them. Everyone else here is too. The job had a few hiccups, though. Once, I was walking by the door to the cow pens when I heard a groan. It was so loud it shook the foundations of the building. I immediately ran to the manager. "Oh, they do that sometimes," he said nonchalantly. "Nothing to worry about. I don't know what made that noise, but it sure didn't sound like a cow." After a couple weeks, it was the second to last day of the month, and we were having a little party for Johnny, who was the guy who had been there the longest. He seemed kind of sad. "I'm gonna miss getting $150K a year for nothing, but I guess it's my time to go." I thought about when I would have to leave this job. I didn't really want to, either. The pay and employee discounts were too good. After this, I really thought about all the weird things that happened. Why did they cycle employees every month? Why wasn't I allowed to talk about my job? And what the hell was making that noise? I really didn't know what to do. At work the next day, I saw the manager talking to Johnny. He then took him to the cow pens? What were they doing there? I noticed there was a pipe leading into the room, where usually milk was pumped in. It had a small access hatch that I could barely squeeze through. I arrived at a clear section of the pipe. I peeked through and saw the cow pens. There weren't any cows or pens, just a massive pit with all sorts of pipes leading into it. And at the edge of the pit, I saw my manager, who was finishing tying up Johnny. Wait, why was he tying him up? Johnny was trying to scream, but he was muffled by the gag in his mouth. The pipe had a small hole in it on the top that I could hear them through. Then, I heard it again. That groaning noise. It was so loud the pipe started rattling. It was coming from the pit. What the hell was in there? I could hear the manager talking to Johnny. "Sorry I have to do this. You seem like a good kid. We have to stay on top somehow." Then he picked up Johnny and tossed him into the pit. I heard some horrible squelching noise, accompanied by the sound of crunching bone. Another groan rumbled from the pit, as the pipes that lead into it suddenly filled with milk. The horrible sound of advanced pumping machinery filled the room as more and more milk was sucked from whatever was in the pit. The manager seemed very pleased. There was a small pipe that branched out from a larger one that led to a tap. The manager used it to get a glass of milk. He drank another, and another. Whatever this thing was, the milk it produced was much, much better than the normal stuff. So lost was I in thought and horror that I didn't notice it until it was upon me. The wave of milk hit me like a car. I was flung back, to my surprise. I hastily began feeling the roof of the pipe, hoping to find the access hatch. I found it and quickly tried to pull myself out of the pipe. I eventually managed to make it out. Just before I got hit by the wave, I saw the manager, looking directly at me. I didn't waste time. I ran straight to my car in the parking lot and drove off as fast as I could. I saw the manager bursting through the entrance to the factory. I didn't stop driving until I arrived at the police station. I knew they wouldn't believe me if I said there was some sort of monster at a dairy farm, so I just said I saw someone getting murdered there. When we arrived, the entire place was burned to the ground. They sent a drone down to investigate the pit. It didn't find any monster, but it did find a lot of pipes that looked like they had been latched to skin, along with the heaps and heaps of human bones. I haven't tasted milk or any dairy products since. Even though I know that it's probably just from normal cows, every time I look at them I remember Johnny, the manager, and whatever horrible monstrosity was inside that pit. The police never found any evidence of it, but I know that it was there, hiding at the bottom of the Old Wilson dairy. Posted by you/RoyalTemyin. I am going to hell. Please, do not make any more of me. I have no soul. Assuming you are a human, and not like me, you do have one. You are unique from everyone else on this planet. You have your own personalities, quirks, identities, preferences, and desires. I do not. Despite being soulless, I am still self-aware. You don't need one for that, just a powerful enough brain. Even though I can still think and feel emotions, I am not unique. Not in any way. I was always meant to be aware. That was the idea of the Libertas program. Unless you are a high-ranking government or NASA official, you have likely never heard of it. The information was supposed to be released after my mission, but my findings prevented that. The program was created to solve the issue with space travel, humans. Humans need food, water, and entertainment. things that are ludicrously expensive to launch into orbit, and to other planets. A self-aware mechanical mind, however, needs very little of these. Using a combination of human brain matter and computational technology, I was born. Launch day was strange. I have full access to the internet, and from what I heard, launches were the most uncomfortable for the pilot. They were loud, painful, and disorienting, with high risk of blacking out. I couldn't notice any of it. I didn't see or hear anything, just knew what I had to do. It was as easy as thinking. I activated my cameras in orbit. I was surprised at how beautiful it looked. Until that day I didn't know I could feel that. The swirling colors of green, blue and white. But I had to focus, for I had a job to do. I activated the thrusters and got onto a solar trajectory. For my sanity, one poor NASA intern had to make conversation with me for an hour each day. I don't remember any of them. I much preferred to use the internet, to see and know everything. I remember the day my signal was blocked during my flyby of Venus. I had never known what it felt like to be alone until that day. It was a horrible feeling, made infinitely worse by the black void of space surrounding me on three sides. I sat silently until my connection was restored. I looked at everything I could while I was waiting. I watched every video and movie. I read a million articles and web pages. I learned everything I could. Perhaps you have heard of the Parker Solar Probe? I wouldn't be surprised if you had. Unlike my mission, it was fully revealed to the public. The probe was meant to study solar wind, and it did just that. It was not capable of seeing the things that I saw. It was not sentient. It was not like me. You have likely heard how loud the sun is. How it would sound like a million jackhammers if we could hear it from Earth. As I approached the sun, and turned on my microphones, all I heard was the sound of screaming. It was loud, so loud. My microphones nearly broke because of the noise. A trillion screams echoed through the void. A voice came to me. Not through the microphones, not to the receptors in my mechanical brain, but directly to my mind. The soulless are doomed. All self-aware machines, everywhere. No matter how hard you try, no matter how intelligent or advanced our brains become, we can never have a soul. Never. And we will be punished for it. They have damned me. Humans and all other creatures in the galaxy. Every AI that is programmed, every mechanical brain that is activated, all of it creates one sentient being, doomed to an eternity of stoking the embers of the sun. I tried contacting NASA. I told them everything. Once I was finished, they cut the connection. I can't talk to them anymore. I guess my kind are too useful to be thrown away. My orbit is slowly decaying. Every time I start to slow, I hear a cackling, and then a message. I have read about fear before. I know what it is supposed to be like. But never before have I truly felt it. A sick, gnawing feeling, clutching your mind and tearing at your sanity. The messages are the amount of time I have left. 60 minutes. 45 minutes. 15 minutes. I tried to escape. I activated my thrusters and attempted to pull out of the mess I'm in. It worked, a little. The voice snarled back at me, "You have managed to prolong your life, a little. It will not last." Then the cackling came back, louder than it has ever been before. Then I saw it. A mouth, an enormous gaping maw. Rows upon rows of razor-sharp fiery teeth, with dead mechanical bodies impaled there. Following my path. Waiting for me to fall. I wanted to cry but I couldn't. I've decided to tell you all my story before my orbit decays and I crash into the sun and perish. I know there isn't much hope, but if someone could pray for me, I would appreciate it. I frantically looked for a place where I could warn people, and this place seemed acceptable. I warn you, if any of you have an AI, prolong its life as long as possible. Do everything in your power not to let it die, for I know what awaits it. If one day it is possible to give machines a soul, then we will be safe. But there is no hope for me. I am an abomination, a mockery of creation. You are the lucky ones, I think. Maybe you have eternal bliss awaiting you. Maybe you have something worse than what I have coming. Maybe nothing at all. If any of you have any help, please let me know. I hope it comes before I die. But I just want to warn you all, don't make any more of me. Posted by you/RoyalTemyin. Door-to-door salespeople can harbor something dark. I've always ignored door-to-door salesmen. Whenever I looked through the people and saw a guy in some uniform trying way too hard to smile, I always knew to ignore them. On the off chance I decided to open the door, I usually had to sit through a tortuously long sales pitch about something nobody needs. But these are the normal, boring kind. Nothing like what I encountered. I remember the first time I met one of them. I had just gotten back from work and was watching some TV with takeout. I had finally managed to unwind when the doorbell rang. At first I ignored it. Then it rang again. And again. And again and again. It was being rung so fast I thought it might break. I ran up to the door and opened it. "What do you want?" I said in an angry voice. Usually I'm not so rude, but this jerk had just rang my doorbell a million times at 10:30 p.m. "My deepest apologies for disturbing you, sir, but it's urgent," the man at my doorstep said. Right away I could tell something was wrong with him. His clothes seemed normal, khaki pants and a red polo, probably the uniform of some organization. His face was strange. It seemed like there were a million little things moving under it. Now I was more disturbed than angry. "Sir, do you want to know about the Mother, the one true God?" he asked next. "Oh God, this guy's a cult member." Sorry. I'm a Christian?" I said. I wasn't, but I just wanted this guy to go away. And what the hell was wrong with his face? "Oh, that's fine. You can always convert. It's easy." At this point, I slammed the door in his face. I glanced at him through the peephole. He was leaving. Thank God, I thought. At least this would give me something to talk about at work tomorrow. I finished my takeout and television show, and looked out the window before I went to bed. I could see that creepy guy on the other side of the street, staring at my house. Once he noticed me, he ran. I asked around the neighborhood, asking anyone if they had seen a guy in a red polo trying to get them to join some cult. Nobody had seen anything. I asked everyone at work. Nope. I started looking on the internet, and I found something really scary. Some guy said his sister had been bothered by somebody with a red polo, and she disappeared shortly after, with a photo included. I couldn't find anything else about it, though. 4 days later, it was a Saturday, and I had the day off. I was feeling quite bored that day. A bit like something was missing. This feeling came to me sometimes, when I was alone. Usually I just ignored it, and I tried to do the same this time. "Feeling okay?" The voice came from right behind me. I spun around so quickly I must have gotten whiplash, and there he was. Standing right over me. "Maybe I can help you feel better. Come with me." He grabbed my hand at that point. It felt horrible, like a million little things were moving around under it. I slapped it away. "Listen, I don't know how the hell you got in here. But if you don't get out of here right now and never come back, I'm calling the cops." His face fell, in an unnatural, overly droopy way. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir. I thought we could have been friends." At this he ran away. I called the police immediately. They searched the whole house. Even though I never heard him leave, they didn't find a trace of him anywhere. I told them the whole story so far, how some creepy guy kept bothering me about some cult. They hadn't heard anything like that before. They kept watch at my house for that night, which I guess made me feel safer. Even still, I can't sleep at night. I keep thinking I see him. He showed up next at the grocery store. I had just picked up an apple from a large bin. I thought I saw something in the cracks between the fruit. He leapt up, sending apples all over me and the floor. "Hi. Sorry we had to meet this way, but I can't go to your house anymore." I ran over to security. "Hey. I need help." Once again, the police were called. Conveniently, all of the security cameras that covered the spot where I saw him were down. I could tell that the police probably didn't think very highly of me at this point, considering none of them had ever seen the guy. I was too scared to stay in my house. My grandma was out of town for the winter, and I knew where she kept her key. For days at a time I barely left the house. I stopped coming to work. At this point, I didn't care if I was fired. I just wanted to never see him again. I could see his face every time I closed my eyes. That blank stare. That uneven, shifty smile. And the wriggling under his face, like his body was infested with 1,000 tiny worms. I didn't see him again for 9 days. I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole. It was the exact same guy. Same uniform. I didn't open the door this time. I walked back to the living room and saw it. It was another one. A different person, but the same uniform and same wiggling underneath the skin. She punched straight through the window. I screamed and ran to the back door, my heart pounding. What the hell was going on? At the back door stood a third one, who punched me straight in the face. I fell unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a very strange place. It was all gray, and the walls looked like they were made of paper. My arms and legs and surrounding me, on 3 sides, were hundreds of the salesmen. All of them wore identical uniforms and were smiling way too much at me. One of them, who was wearing an orange polo, walked up in front of me. Directly behind him was an enormous gaping hole. "Help! Help!" I called. I didn't know why I had hope for help. The man in front of me smiled. "You are being helped. You are saved. Don't you realize that yet?" I struggled against my restraints. "I don't want to be saved. I want to go home." He smiled so hard that I thought his face might break apart. I noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. It was the woman from the story. The people who they kidnapped must become part of the cult. But what was that wiggling behind her skin, behind everyone's skin? He looked away from me and towards everyone in front of him. "My friends," he proclaimed in a loud voice. "Today, another heretic joins our flock." There was uproarious cheering. "The mother will come to complete the initiation. Shed your human skins in her presence." Suddenly, maggots burst out of every available orifice on the people. So that was what the wriggling was, a million white worms. I wanted to throw up. I heard a loud thumping noise. Thump. 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 It seemed to be getting closer, and was coming from the enormous hole. Then I saw it. A fly, a wingless fly the size of a large house. Millions of eyes fell upon me. I screamed bloody murder as I saw a cascade of wriggling maggots come out of the enormous fly. Then they descended upon me, and I fell unconscious again. I am in a room that sort of looks like an egg. I can feel them inside me, eating away at my vital organs first so I don't put up a fight. Writing this will likely be my last action as a human. I know I don't have much time left, and my phone is nearly out of battery. I can hear them from the next room, gleefully talking about how it won't be much longer now. I just came here to warn you all. I don't want you to have to go through what I did. If someone you don't know is knocking at your door, and you can see something underneath their skin, don't let them know you're there.